human beings. There's actually lots of people in this studio, but two that you'll be able to see on camera. It's a gorgeous day in Denver, Colorado, and it has been lately. It's just the right balance of gray clouds and beautiful blue skies, so I'm happy to be alive. I'm here with Steven Sampson and John Shockness. John Shockness is going to serenade us before we begin our interview, so ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy the beautiful, beautiful sound of Kid Astronaut.
Crossed all these miles to see you, just to look into your eyes. Drove far out west impromptu, and have you back before sunrise. Dancing through the desert, girl, I never had someone love me so well. Darling, I can't take my hands off you while we're passing all these city limits. Your lips on me while I'm staring, and I'm in love with all the things you do. If this time won't last forever, then I hope that you remember. Dancing through the desert, girl, I never had someone love me so well. Dancing through the desert, girl, I never had someone love me so well. Yeah.
Round of applause from me personally. John Shockness is one of my favorite human beings on this planet. He's not just talented, he's kind and compassionate and honest, and it comes through in his sound. So I really want to thank him for being here, and thank Rich in the back for hosting us, and everybody at the We Are Denver Collective for providing this platform to sit down with great artists just like John. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy another song from Kid Astronaut.
Sun is setting, darling. It might get dark out there. You might feel cold breeze call you in October air. I can't wait to see you underneath purple lemon sky. Ooh, ooh, Waves of color paint are seen. And birds are dancing way up there, yeah. I'd be jealous of their freedom, but I like it with you down here. I can't wait to see you underneath purple lemon sky. Underneath purple lemon sky. Underneath purple lemon sky. Underneath purple lemon sky. Underneath purple lemon. Do 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 do.
I love you, John Shockman. You talented human being. Are you going to do one more for us?
Yeah, one more.
Beautiful.
Let's do this. Bored of space? Are we bored of time? Do we hate each other? 'Cause it feels that way sometimes. Are we bored of love? Are we bored of art? Do we disconnect because we don't know who we are? Said all of this won't matter when we turn back into matter, and all we think we own will one day be gone. So I believe in real, the things that we can touch, and I know that love will connect and protect us till we find our love, 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 our love, our love.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, Kid Astronaut here in the studio with us. Such a pleasure to hear you play live, John. It really is. He's going to come and join us here at the table. We're going to move a camera so that you can see Samson's pretty face as well. But until then, I'm going to tell you a little bit about We Are Denver. We Are Denver is a collective, a podcast collective right now, but also a news and arts collective, highlighting and showcasing local artists in our city. And we couldn't be more honored to have one of them here in front of us. That is Sir John Shockness. Well, he gets all settled in. I'm sure he's going to tell us about who Kid Astronaut is, as well as John's history as a musician. But first, and before we get into any of the artsy-fartsy stuff, how you guys doing? How's your day going?
Good, man. I just got back from the mountains.
How was that?
It was really tight. We drove for like an hour trying to just find something like serene and quiet, and it's not there. It's like not there. There's so many cars, so many residential areas. And
So
I was
many
like,
people.
I found myself getting frustrated, and I was like, why am I mad about this? Like, it's happening, it's cool. But I was just like, I don't know. I want to find like a lake.
Yeah. I always
we do?
suggest El Dorado Canyon.
Okay.
There can be people there sometimes, but if you sit in the middle of the river, there's a couple of spots where you can sort of like walk out onto the rocks into the river. The river drowns out.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. Is like go like there's a lot of places where the road is like running around, and it's like up away another like 10 feet above the river or whatever. So you just like drop down into like right next to the river, and all the traffic noise is above you, and the river noise is at you.
I need to find more places like
That drowns it out. Yeah.
El Dorado Canyon. It's only 45-minute drive over by Red Rocks. So,
All right.
how are you, Samson? It is your birthday.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday.
Happy
dude.
birthday.
Oh wait, before we get too far away from it, I did want to say that was awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah, that was
You have
so good.
You have a heavenly voice. It's incredible.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you and Olivia Blue, have you guys ever played together? Because you just have that
I
same
just
kind
met
of
her
like
once.
Yeah, I just got the same kind of feeling when she was here of just being like, damn, this is magic, So you guys just have amazing voices and a great command of the guitar. So,
Yeah, beautiful command of that acoustic feeling.
Yeah.
And also really good lyrics. They're both people who create their own lyrics, and they are very expressive. Their lyrics say who they are.
Yeah.
They're not just like a commentary on XYZ issue. It's revealing as to who they must really be. Like my favorite line from one of those last songs was, I like the things that are real, the things you can't touch. That says a lot about who John Shockness is in a very good way, I think. So
Bless. Wait, man.
Like tigers at the zoo. You can't.
you can't touch
You
them.
can't touch those.
They are very real. Very real.
They will eat you.
Yeah.
I watched videos of like, I know that's horrible, but if you see like a tiger eating someone online, I don't know. I watched it.
Did you
brutal.
happen upon it, or were you like, you know what I want to watch?
I'm going to look for it, and I happened upon it, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
World
Like, made
star.
some ramen and sat there like, what do I want to watch? Well, happy birthday, Samson.
Thanks.
Happy birthday. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 38.
Nice.
What does it feel like to be 38?
It doesn't actually, which is interesting.
That's good.
Yeah, and I was actually I remember my dad's 40th birthday, and that's coming up. So I think, me coming up on 40, I think about like what it was like for me to be 10 and remember my dad's, because that was the first time we had like a big party. It's the first really thing I can identify with my dad at the age that I am now, like one of those crossover points.
Right.
And I've been thinking about that quite a bit. And my dad called me yesterday and was like, he's like, man, I was just thinking about like that 40th birthday I had was like the first like really big birthday we ever did around the house. And I was like, yeah, me too. Like,
So how old's your dad now then?
he's got 30 on me. So he's about to he'll be just turned 38 or 68 or 67, I think. We're matched up for minutes. I think he just turned 67 or 68. But,
Gotcha.
yeah, so that's been interesting, but it doesn't feel like anything, which is great. Like I feel like my only lament is that I'm moving around just a little bit less than usual. So my body has responded by being a little bit less useful, but I don't feel old
Good.
in any respect whatsoever.
You don't seem old in any respect. So that's really good.
I like how you said it's like your body and how you use it, because like I was noticing today, I was like, I can just like get across this thing, and like I have to be in my body to do that.
Yeah.
Or else your mind will tell you that you can't do something, which it could happen at any age.
Yeah.
Yep. Also,
you get what you want. You get what you ask for.
yeah, and you get the relationship you've built. It's It's going to be reciprocal, and it's going to give you what you've given, and it's going to take what you've taken. So the more you can have a relationship with your body, the better. I was a kid who grew up as like a video game player, and I think between the ages of 12 and 16 must have done a phenomenally small amount of movement. You know, like a lot of sitting in chairs, drinking Mountain Dew, and seriously, a lot of it. And becoming an adult now, I'm realizing how much harder I have to work. And now I have a pretty good relationship with my body, but it took a while to build that because I didn't have any structure. I had no foundation on which to build that relationship.
What became your structure?
I think yoga helped a lot.
Cool.
Like it sounds really corny to say, but
I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
I think people should like respect. I personally feel like yoga is something that can be respected.
Do you do a lot of yoga, John?
Yeah, I do, man. I did some this morning, and it was just, it's not like, there's an industry that has been built around it, and I also think that's a great thing, because now that people are willing to kind of just even step into that realm and see it have access to it, and also know that there's like a spiritual element, you can't deny that.
You can't.
You know?
Just in the experience of it.
Even if you're sweating, if you've never been to a yoga class, you're sweating in a hot room, and you're doing it and you're hating your life, at the end, after you come out of Shavasana, something will happen to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
a kind of peace and calm and release where you're like, oh my, I haven't felt this
like,
way
whoa.
for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just being in your body like that, even just the mindfulness is consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's what yoga has done for me personally. So I can see, I resonate.
Yeah. It definitely helped me on both those. I would say without yoga, not only would I not have a good relationship with my body, I wouldn't have the relationship that I have today with consciousness, which is kind of a weird way to put it the more I think about it. But, yeah, you do a little yoga too, right, Samson?
Mm-hmm. Not these days, but I used to be my Sunday day. Like yoga was part of God Day.
Yeah, but now this is God Day?
Yeah, now God Day is talking into a microphone.
God dang. That's interesting.
Actually, it's funny how you promote yourself, you know, like if I were to, you know, what you say versus what you actually do when it comes to podcasting, what I do is click a mouse button.
But it's more than that.
Well, I was like only 20% is actually talking into a microphone. So
Yeah, you do a lot of engineering and setting up and helping all this get up to speed, which we're very.
But I mean, like
thankful to have.
I get home at 7 and then I'm clicking a mouse button until midnight.
Yep, uploading stuff. And,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's just the way it is. That's a kind of relationship that you have too.
Yeah.
And you've got a pretty good relationship with that engineering. Would that be right brain side too? So that's good.
No.
Left brain.
Left.
Shows you how good my left brain is. Well, we live in Denver, Colorado, and Denver's changing a lot, yeah? You're both people who've been here for a little bit. Samson, maybe not as long as John, but still plenty, right?
Yeah, well, I was never very far away, but I've been in Denver for 5 years.
Gotcha. How long have you been here, John? You grew up
My whole
here?
life, yeah. Grew up here.
And never lived anywhere else?
Just other than traveling,
Right.
like being on the road, which I don't know. I've been, my house is here,
Yeah.
but I've been,
My house. The House of Shockness.
yeah, the house. Oh man, I finally caught up on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I'm not as like into it now, which kind of sucks because like you started it so long ago and you're like, I got to finish this thing. And now it's kind of just like, I'm kind of like past the magic of it in a way.
I'm going to blame, I don't know if, did you read any of it or just watching it?
I've just been watching it.
I mean, for me, I can kind of agree with that, but that's because I read it and
You
then
know
started
the
watching
story.
it. Yeah, and so to watch it kind of diverge and it's kind of withered away into a TV show rather than a
Possibly not even as good.
Well, there's just there's a third as many characters and things going on. Like he's weaving really giant like war scenarios, you know. And in the TV series, you're kind of getting like kind of 3 vectors of drama, you know, from the 3 major houses, you know, the 3 major kings and queens and whatever that are what it's whittled down to. But in the books, like all of the little stuff that's going on in the background and like, oh, this guy accidentally did this and none of this stuff would have happened if that guy didn't accidentally do that. There's like hundreds of those kinds of things that have just been thrown out because you can't have that many characters in a TV show.
I wonder if
It's
George
just not
R. R. Martin
manageable.
just kind of like frees his mind and just trusts it. Just like this will
He
wind up
must.
like fine.
Yeah.
Like
Well, in
he
order
has
to
no
create-
way of knowing.
In order to create that much material, you can't spend that much time editing and looking
Thinking.
back. Yeah.
Yeah,
How many
sure.
books did he do? Like 5 or 6, right?
7.
7. They're big
They're huge books.
too, right?
Yeah, and
Massive.
the 7th and the 6th and the 7th is actually the 6th that then got so big he divided it into 2,
Oh.
which is an interesting thing from my perspective because he had this one big book, right, with all the chapters, and then he took all of the new characters that he introduced in that book and put them in the first book, and then took all the characters that we'd known and put them in the second book. So suddenly there was a book with a bunch of new people.
You didn't even know.
Yeah, and you're like, what's going on? You know, so you had to like read a whole book having no idea what was going on with all of the characters you'd come to associate as.
Was it like a perfectly timed, like, oh, what's happening to them? And then he's like, nope.
That was an editorial decision. He didn't write the book that way. So I read, because I downloaded it rather than buying the books. So I was able to like read them in order as he had originally intended. So I read the 6th and 7th as one giant book interlaced. So I didn't have that effect, or I didn't have to like suffer through that. So
It's
that
still
was-
pretty
it was very
popular,
interesting.
though. It seems it's losing a little bit of steam, but Game of Thrones is pretty darn popular overall.
Oh, dude. Oh, it's an amazing show. Like even just watching it, the cinematography and just like the characters and like how
HBO,
they
man.
interact. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is great.
There's no one else that does.
Personally, I'm like,
All of their sets are on
there.
location.
Yeah. they're-
That's almost no other show does that. And there's a couple of cool documentaries about how they've got like 3 separate camera crews that are going around the world filming all this stuff. But either way, it's an interesting metaphor for me to see why people are so interested in Game of Thrones, because it must say something about our current atmosphere and climate and the grabbing of power and like the shifting of houses and kingdoms and the rise and fall of empire is something that as humans we seem really interested in. Why do you guys think that is?
I also I want to attach a little bit to the mortality of the show, you know,
Right.
of like killing people. Like the big R.R. Martin joke is how he just kills people off as soon as you're attached to him,
Right.
and that's kind of a new phenomenon. Pop culture has traditionally been very massaged and softened, you know, like the guy that you are watching in the first 5 minutes of the movie is the guy you're watching at the last 5 minutes of the movie, you know.
Right.
So like you sit down to a movie and you're like, I know this guy's gonna live because they've made me attached to him, you know.
But
And
there's
they
no guarantee of that in Game of Thrones.
yeah, and that's it's a formulaic thing that doesn't have to be. There's no from an outside perspective, they've done it for whatever reason. You know, I guess they don't want to like, you know, you develop an attachment and then you walk out of the movie theater and your favorite person is dead. You know, like why would you come back? But
Yeah.
Game of Thrones has proved that like you don't have to do that. You know, you can keep an audience and lose all your characters. You know, but
Yeah.
I think to that point, I lost interest when Jon Snow like re-engineered himself, and that's
After
like,
he got stabbed in the heart?
yeah, it's just like, man.
spoiler
like,
alert.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. I
sorry.
should say that.
Nah.
It's
No,
all
I
right.
should.
It's too late now.
I should.
It's
It's
too late.
etiquette.
Is it?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
At this point,
That was like 2 seasons ago.
yeah, people
Whatever.
should know. You catch up.
Yeah, you gotta catch
you
up.
know, but that is a major thing. Spoiler alert. But I feel like I lost interest because it doesn't have those same kind of boundaries and rules. Now you can just like bring anyone back.
Well, yeah, it's part of their whole dead, undead, light versus the dark dichotomy. I will say that's probably my least favorite part. I'm not like a huge fan of when the dualism gets that easy. It's like, we're the good guys. They're the bad guys.
That's why I loved Game of Thrones.
Right, because it was so nuanced. You
Yeah,
didn't know
you
who
didn't
was
know.
good and bad, right? There was a time when everyone was rooting for the Lannisters, who like were incestuous, but they seemed like you should be rooting for them in some way. And now it's kind of hard to like those characters. You know?
But you do love Jamie,
I love Jamie.
and then there's that.
Poor Jamie.
You know, there's that thing too. You know, so it is a good show.
It's a good show, yeah. But to me, again, my least favorite part is that when it gets too dualistic, like, well, we're all going to band together and kill the dead people or re-kill them, or whatever it is.
I'm excited to see because there's 2 episodes left, so
Oh, yeah, in the season.
they have the ability to say there's 2 episodes left, but have like their hidden card, which is like there's a movie or something, you know.
And OAV.
They've
There
been
you go.
talking about that.
Yeah, OVA.
They have been talking about that.
Yeah, yeah.
This last episode is longer, but I don't think that means that they're done.
Well, HBO, I mean, they already produce movies. Every episode's a damn movie. When you look at like the production
Yeah,
quality and the
absolutely.
writing, it's incredible.
Yeah.
HBO is leagues ahead of anyone else right now. I mean, Netflix originals don't have the kind of shine that an HBO original does. And Showtime, and what's the other one?
Hulu. There's
There's another one that's in like
pantheon of.
in the pantheon. You have like TV subscriptions, HBO, Showtime, and
FX.
no.
Is that what you said?
Miles is trying to signal me something about which one it is, but I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see. No, but it doesn't matter. HBO just does such high quality content, and I think it's proof that if you do that, people will come and they'll pay and do it well. So anyway, aside from Game of Thrones and sort of bringing it back to Denver, you did grow up here.
I did.
How have you seen our city change? You know, there's all these, similar to Game of Thrones, are all these power shifts and different groups of people and new populations. And
I think that is to the Game of Thrones thing where I'm just kind of not interested. Yeah, I'm just kind of not interested.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to really learn my place in life. I know that I'm here for a reason. You know, I do think life is very nuanced, and I'm trying to just like really focus. And yeah.
well, let's talk about you for a little bit then. First, tell us, who's Kid Astronaut?
Kid Astronaut is a vision of mine that is kind of like representative of my highest self. But I think Kid Astronaut to me has to be truth, but also in a global, like massive scale. So I'm very inspired, and I've been watching a lot of Michael Jackson like videos and learning about his story. And I was fortunate to watch a kind of anti-Michael Jackson story.
I didn't even know those existed.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like geared towards this, like, he's a tragic figure.
Okay.
Which I appreciated seeing because, like, in my eyes, like, this is a perfect human being. You know, of course you hear about his flaws, but I can track those back and say that there are certain things that might have led up to those, you know, negative. I don't know. I don't think he like raped kids, but I do think that he didn't have those boundaries and those lines in his mind, which I don't know. It could be talked about that maybe in that specific case for someone who just had the best intentions. I don't know. But then like the kid was like, I know what his dick looks like. Can I say that?
Yeah,
So
you can.
I don't
This
know.
is
It
uncensored.
could have been blurred, and I don't know Michael Jackson personally, but I know my relationship to that archetype.
The crazy
you know?
thing is that we'll never know.
Yeah.
No one will ever know. Only the kid and Michael Jackson or whoever's closest or whatever, whoever had a first-hand experience. The rest of it's absolute fucking conjecture.
Yeah.
You know, and then that's the case. I've got a couple of friends right now who are going through some like interpersonal issues that they're taking to court and whatnot, and I've listened to both their sides of it. And the crazy thing to me that I come away with thinking is, man, I'm not even interested in what the truth is because it's beyond me. It's got nothing to do with me. But for some reason, when it comes to our icons, when it comes to the people we look up to, we seem really interested in their, you know, their flaws and their individual stories and the things that we have no firsthand account or experience of. But there are some things we do, like Michael Jackson's skin color did change. That's something that we can all, that is a thing that we can talk about, and how that is something that really affected him. The child molestation thing is something that we're going to have to leave to the courts and the gods to do its own judging. And he's dead now, so you know, what's the point of continuing to?
Yeah,
So
I think it's worth commentary on. I always got the impression that Michael Jackson was kind of still trapped in his childhood, a lot of ways, and I got the feeling that he was a pretty genuine. Like, the thing that always struck me was how he was, like, really mad at his brothers when they was the Jackson 5 and they started getting girlfriends. And he's like, you can't have girlfriends. Like, all of these people out there depend on you to be this thing that would be, like, basically single, you know? Like,
Right.
we represent this.
He understood the mythology of it.
Yeah, the ideology of it. And he's like, you're ruining the picture for, like, these people that, like, come to you for this, you know, image or whatever. Like, he was very much aware of his image. And I think that's what part of what made him the king of pop, is that he was like, I'm delivering a package, you know? And I do think that there was something very interesting, and certainly there was a magic to it, whatever that may or may not have been. But it's very interesting that kind of seemed to be a fracture point And I'm getting that most of that from the movie biography. It's not like I've dug into him deeply, but, you know, like that's really seemed to be like a fracture point, and it's very easy to see a potential of not even a literal wounding of him as a child, you know, like literally him being molested by anyone. It could be as simple as like, you know, the rough relationship with his dad, you know, like the tough love situation, and then the kind of like loss of innocence of being a child in that situation. And I'm sure I struggled a lot with that time when I realized that I thought everything was like a handshake, you know, like you shake somebody's hand, you look them in the eye and you make a deal, you know, and that's what happens. And then when I realized that there was like dishonesty in the world, you know, that was like one of the big breaks for me as a kid. And
loss of innocence moments.
Yeah. And it's easy to imagine him in such a like venomous place as Hollywood to like have a very wounded experience with what people are telling him is happening, and then him seeing the real potential, you know, and any of that could have amounted to a massive amount of abuse. Right. On a lot of levels, which then could have led to his like inappropriate relationship on any level with anyone he's around. You know, like it's easy to see how in that situation, especially coming up as a kid, like you get messed up in that kind of situation if you're not careful.
Well, I think that what's really important about what you're laying out is that regardless of who does what, it's important to try and understand people's stories, both as an oppressor and as someone who is oppressed. Because it's never one-sided.
Yeah.
It's never that someone is purely a victim or purely the aggressor. Maybe in very limited cases, but even then, the aggressor is usually a victim of a very similar circumstance.
Yeah.
There are some pretty crazy studies out there that talk about domestic abuse relationships and how almost a large percentage of people who are domestic abusers were domestically abused.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And they call it the cycle of abuse, right? So it's a very nuanced story, but I think it's a larger metaphor for that anything we have trouble with, like, I don't know, I'm trying to take a random one, like if you really have trouble with obesity, like you really dislike people who are obese, then there's got to be some story within you that is related to your own body image, or maybe even the other way around. If you really praise people who have beautiful bodies and work really hard for that, there must be some story. These cycles have to do with how we identify ourselves and how we give ourselves value. So what is the story of Kid Astronaut? What's the story of if Kid Astronaut had a story that was not John Shockness?
Yeah. I think that is the story that I'm kind of like learning about right now. You know, coming from this place of, you know, Michael Jackson being an idol and then seeing his more human side, understanding my human side, and learning also about the, you know, I guess it is, there's a desire to be, you know, liked. You want your music to be bought. But I don't want to lose myself in that process. And I think that is really what I want Kid Astronaut to represent. Because I believe in myself, and I think that I can take my music to everywhere in the world. Like, I dream of that everyone in the world will hear it, will resonate with it, and they'll also be able to see me as a human being. And, you know, I'm pretty open. Like, I talk about my flaws or just what's going on in my life. Like, most people know, unfortunately, most people know what's happening with me.
I don't think that's unfortunate.
I mean,
if you want to be this icon that's about how the human story works, then part of it is
being seen.
Yep, being seen in all of your lights.
Yeah, you know, and it's also being able to come back and, you know, whatever, in the good and the bad, stand through it. Yeah. So I think all of those things are kind of what I'm learning Kid Astronaut will represent and represents. And then as I start to pull out, you know, these images for my album, like this gold leaf moon that I'm starting to play with, like all of those things have meaning. And so that's kind of just what I want to talk about.
Yeah. Every icon should have meaning in that way.
Yeah.
The images, the pictures, the actual story of what Kid Astronaut is, that's all wonderful.
Yeah.
How long has Kid Astronaut been a thing?
So I started this project in 2015. And since I was a member of Air Dubai, and, you know, I loved playing with those guys, but there was that part of me that wanted to really figure out what I wanted to express. And so, like, in any bands, like, I love playing with other people as well. So, you know, building that balance and trying to figure out, like, how best to stay truthful and honest, because at the end of the day, if like I do want to be happy and I do want to respect my art and the things that I'm putting out into the world, like I have that power and that ability to, you know, if something's not going the right way, it's just like Michael Jackson, you know, he was like, they were telling him sing it this way, but he was like, I want to build this,
He's
you
like,
know, I want to
sharp
build
left
that,
turn.
you know,
Yeah.
and that is what made. That's like, you got to push yourself out sometimes. So it's a hard balance. Like I said, it's nuances, you know. But I'm just learning.
Well, you're doing a great job. And the more you can listen to yourself and the more you can express what's really what you feel real deep inside, the more people are going to resonate.
And it's cool. Like, I feel like as I trust myself, as I trust my path, everything else will kind of like realign, you know.
Has it really only been 2
on
years?
on your clock?
1-on-1.
Yeah, man. So I've been playing guitar for that long too, and that was one of the things I told myself I could never do. Like, I remember sitting in my guitar and I was like, I wish I had a twin who could like play guitar so that we can play together. And then I was like, why don't I just learn this? Like, there's nothing stopping me, you know? So kind of taking those steps, like I rode the Tower of Doom with Caleb Marquis that year, and I told myself I will never, ever touch the Tower of Doom, but I was like, I have to do this. So just like breaking down my own narratives, and like an astronaut
your
is an
fears.
explorer, like
Yeah.
to the moon, yo, like let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's reach new heights.
Yeah,
So,
and there's something about the exploratory nature of being a child, you know?
kid, yo, don't you lose your childlike heart. Like, I know we talked about Michael Jackson.
No, it's
You should not lose your childlike
You shouldn't. And it is a weird, complicated, nuanced journey
Exactly.
to have, because people, it's so often in this culture people talk. I think it's starting to fade a little bit, but people are so quick to say, you need to act like an adult. There's a professional way to act. And I'm not sure those people are very successful.
They
Not
are in
anymore.
a certain system.
In a certain lens, but in terms of my view of success is being happy.
Exactly.
Yeah, those people are losing market share. That's how I would describe that.
Yeah.
The suit and ties, the suits, they're losing that market share of like this adult thing they keep talking about.
Yeah, see, it has no buy on me personally. But it's weird because it used to. So I come from a world where that.
Well, that's part of that,
everything.
Starting, being my birthday, we're talking about age. Like, you get to a point and you're like, nothing's changing. This adult thing is a sham.
Yeah, it's obviously a sham.
You're like, I do consider there to be like kind of an adult. Like for me, that was 27.
That's my year right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I have to like tweak things.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do anything, but I felt like my relationship with myself and the world's relationship with me kind of took on like an adult overtone. And all that was like, like you are saying, I've dealt with something similar to this before. So when I get the short end of the shaft or whatever, I'm not going to freak out. That's basically what being adult is. It's not really like, and you're only just slightly more prepared for situations, or you're more prepared for the unknown. But like you are not any different. You're just, the next time something happens, the chances of you like freaking out are reduced.
I don't know if that's an adult thing or if that's just like an awareness thing. Like,
Well, I mean, there are also people who don't freak out the first time something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I think those people, in a very interesting way, are the most childish because they're so exploratory and they're so adventurous.
and that's
that
not a
when
bad thing.
No, it's not. And when something goes wrong, they don't think like, oh no, The one thing I see in adults that's referred to as stress is actually sort of the opposite of what you're referring to, which is like something very menial happens. Someone cuts them off, or there's traffic where they weren't expecting, and suddenly all of their expectations, of what they thought they were gonna, and then oh no,
Yeah, but that's what we're talking about, and the fact that like they're attaching a label to adult, and that's success. Like I said, the suits, like that market share is dying. Like that's also a thing that's dying, is the people who are have like a odd relationship with the world, where they're putting all this weight on something that doesn't really matter, like the amount of traffic that's around them. Like I expected to get to work 10 minutes earlier. Now I'm mad, and
I expected to see lakes.
and that's not an adult
traffic.
thing. That's a very childish thing of like having a poor relationship with your expectations.
Yeah, that's the interesting sort of dichotomy. Is I don't think that's childish at all. I think that's a very adult thing to do, to have those expectations. The children that I see, that I work with kids sometimes, actually fairly often, and when kids, especially kids under, I'd say under 10 for sure, when something doesn't go their way, if there are certain kids who've been conditioned already into this adult mindset of like things are supposed to go a certain way, and when they don't, they get punished. So their fear is what really drives them. But the kids who don't, especially under 10, when something goes wrong, they immediately move on. Like it's not a question of what's different now, or if that's good or bad. It's like, ooh, something new to explore. Oh, I wasn't expecting this. What a pleasant surprise is sort of the constant attitude I see from young ones. And from like the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu and people who, you know, could say like enlightened souls who, they've got a very childish demeanor. If you've ever watched Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama talk, it's like watching two kids go at it. They're just messing with each other and having a good time, and they don't care what anyone thinks. You know, it's a really interesting dichotomy. So maybe, excuse me, one of the ways that we can mature as real beings is to become more immature. And one of the ways we can grow up is to return to our childhood innocence. And I do feel really, I have a great deal of empathy for people like Michael Jackson who had that time in their childhood sort of taken away from them. They had some trauma that was prevented them from accessing that. And I wonder if that's why his music was so good, because he was constantly trying to pull that back out of himself, you know? And it is clear, you're right, there is sort of like there's a childishness to all of his music that I think is just delightful. It's just absolutely wonderful.
We listened to Smooth Criminal on the way here. I was just like, yes!
Oh, it's a great
This shit
song.
is amazing!
All of his stuff's good. Even I listened to his most recent album, and I loved all of those songs. That was fantastic. So anyway, it's
Rest in peace.
rest in peace, Michael Jackson. And as we create new icons and as we create new people to look up to in our own lives, I think it's time to stop looking outside for those things and time to start looking inside.
Yeah. And you can also still like value someone's art. Like,
of course.
I'll be a Michael Jackson fan for life, you know?
Yeah.
And like, I still recognize like the things in him that I can learn from and see like, okay, I don't have to live that same story.
Right. But you can learn from it. What a beautiful thing. In a way, you should respect someone who's been through all that trauma more.
Mm-hmm.
Because just like let's think about like the story of a hero, right? If you read a book and the story was like, and the hero did everything perfectly and got the princess and went home and died, I'd be like, that's a boring story. You wouldn't find that hero very interesting. But the more obstacles they have to overcome and the more deep inner trauma they have to release, and you know, the more we love those people, because they're people just like us that are going through all these things. So maybe I wish the world could see Michael Jackson's story less as like a tragic hero, like you said, was of that
That
documentary.
hurt me. I was like watching it like, but it was good.
But more of an epic hero, right? Like Odysseus went through a lot of shit. You know, that's why it was such an epic tale and why it's existed for 2,000, 3,000 years or whatever. But we sort of, I think, I don't know, what is it? Why is it that we want boring heroes sometimes, or we assume we do?
Yeah, I don't
Or
think
like
we
they're
do.
supposed to be perfect.
I got a little lost. Like, who's our boring hero example here?
I don't think there is one, like, because they tend not to be heroes. But when people want Michael Jackson to not have drama around him or not have trauma or not, they say, oh, well, those people shouldn't be doing those things. Well, there's people, and you should be glad that they have all these issues and struggles. So I don't know, maybe it's just a form of delusion that I see in certain
No,
folks.
I love
but-
that, man. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like when it serves to tear this human being down, I'm always like, who made this? Like,
Yeah, that's what
who's
I'm
this
saying.
perfect individual that's just like, Michael Jackson had trauma in his childhood. He's tragic. Like, damn, I look at that like, this kid was just trying to live his life, you know? And now he's like shaped into this thing which a part of him wanted to be. And I think that was another thing, like, his struggle was like, this is really tight, but also like there's a part of me that's missing. I don't know. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And I think it's becoming more interesting, even back to the Game of Thrones reference to bring it full circle. The most interesting characters are the ones that have had a really weird cycle, right? Tyrion is a really well-loved character, and he's been through the whole gambit. Well off, plenty of hookers and whatnot, to
Well, he's
completely
had-
bottom of the barrel.
He's had the full spectrum of
Yeah.
growing up basically the richest kid in the area, but in the worst possible case scenario of being a dwarf, you know, like, and he has seen ugly and poor and ugly and rich and beautiful rich, you know, like
he's seen the whole spectrum.
He's got the widest range, really, which is why he's an excellent advisor.
And no nose in the book, right?
Yeah, totally. And he was like a lot uglier to start with.
Yeah.
Money.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and stories are an interesting thing. Who are your guys' favorite heroes? Like, who are icons that mean a lot to you personally? You said Michael Jackson. What about you, Samson?
Big one for me is always Richard Feynman.
Richard Feynman. You talk about him a lot, but I haven't.
Yeah, he's just he's a physicist, but what sets him apart was the fact that he's just a super personable guy. You know, like if you met him on the street, you would probably never realize that he was one of the smartest people on the planet.
That's what I love about people.
Yeah, he was just he's one of those guys who just like. Because we've all met those people who are like just so smart that they struggle to be social. Or they don't, they're so busy in their own world of like figuring out how these things are flying around each other and whatnot. They don't give a shit about you. They can't talk to you on your level, and they don't care that they can't talk to you on your level. And I certainly don't fault that, but I think it's.
I feel bad for those people.
Yeah, but they've dedicated so much time to like this craft that they haven't ever dedicated any time to the person craft.
It's Rick Sanchez.
And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But Rick is kind of that. He's social. He's a partier. Like he like gets down, and that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Richard Feynman like did both somehow.
Yeah.
He's like, I dedicated my life to being one of the smartest people on the planet, and I had plenty of time to be awesome. Plays a couple of instruments, speaks a couple of languages.
I want to be well-rounded, like that kind of individual.
Yeah. And he was just one of those guys who he found it so interesting that he was able to do it nonstop, and he got a grasp of the world just through constant repetition and a constant like diversion of all viewpoints and things. And it's just one of my favorite little stories about him was that he got hired on at some little company. He's a physicist, and he got hired on as basically like a master's level chemist to figure out how to make metal stick to plastic. So, like most of your cars, like door handles and stuff, those are pieces of plastic with chrome that is gasified and stuck to the plastic. And he's one of the people who figured that out. And the funny story was he bumped into somebody who was working at a rival company doing the exact same thing later on. And they happened to talk about that. And he was like, oh, I was working over at this one company doing that stuff. And the person was like, oh my God, you guys had so much good stuff coming out of there. You must have had like 100 people in that lab. I couldn't believe the innovations. And
nope, just me.
Just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he just had a grasp on reality.
Yeah.
And
he was creative.
Yeah, and the big thing he takes it to that whole next level, because what he did, his big contribution is the Richard Feynman diagram, and it's this way of describing particles interacting at the quantum level. And he introduced unreality, basically. So his diagrams include the ability to travel backwards in time and forward in time, and to exist and to not exist, like things that would not be typically physics, because physics is the study of stuff. And he's like, well, we should be talking about all the time that your stuff doesn't exist.
All the non-stuff.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. When do things not exist, or when don't they exist?
No.
What about you? Who's one of your heroes?
Oh shit. I don't know.
But right here.
Yeah. I really do look up to the people around me, and I do see all of my friends as kinds of like mythological archetypes. I like to think that like everyone I know is a kind of a Greek god, and I try and surround myself with all kinds of crazy, interesting, weird people. But I do look up to all of them. I look up to both of you quite a bit. That's for sure.
Thank you.
And
I sometimes think, what would Ryan do in this situation?
You don't ever really think
I do, man. Sometimes I'm like, man, I just wish that I could like look at this how Ryan would. Truth.
WWRFD.
Yeah.
Oh God, please don't make those
RFD.
bracelets. In debate, that means reason for decision. That's like why you won or lost.
WRFD. What Ryan Fu do?
What Ryan Fu do? No. It's interesting that you say that, because I like have my own strange perspective that I don't really have a perspective. I'm just looking at stuff, and I think that I'm like really digging for a hero or somebody I really respect on that level. I really liked Carl Sagan, because he was an orator and a scientist, and he could bring it down to Like he could take these giant ideas and bring it down to. I think similarly, I really like Socrates. I guess he was an orator too. I look up to speakers. I look up to a lot of people who could carry the word of their intention in a way that just galvanized people to do crazy shit. Who else? I really can't name any modern icons I look up to much. I like Russell Brand. He's pretty funny, and he's like a weirdo and interesting. And you know, the reason I like Russell is because I'm an alcoholic, and I came from an addictive background, and so did he. So it's nice. He was very inspirational for me, for someone who had, back again to the dark parts of our stories being so important, to seeing that that my addiction wasn't something to be afraid of. It was something I could embrace, and that would make me much stronger if I could integrate it into my story, rather than trying to edit and cut it out of my story. Like, oh, I didn't want that part in there. You know, and say embracing all of it. Say, no, it's all good. It's all fodder for a deeper realization.
Mm-hmm. It's all fuel for the rocket.
That's the idea.
What was your, I mean, like, because I often wonder if, like, some people can just drink, you know?
Yeah.
What makes it an addiction, like,
it's not the substance. It's not the substance, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So what is that feeling? That's what I'm asking.
Everyone feels it. It's any time you attempt to medicate yourself. Like any time, and it's strange, and there might be people who take medications and have cancer say, but I need to medicate yourself. Well, that's not what I mean. What I mean is anytime you have an experience and you think, oh, I'm gonna alter that. That's too much or too little or not enough of, or, you know, it's some form of trying to alter your experience rather than just appreciate how it is.
I can't say I've ever had to.
Like, medicate in that way.
Yeah, everyone does. I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure there's got to be a couple of. I wanted to say examples. What am I looking at? Not the exclusions to the rule, basically, but most people's chemical dependencies are based on their putting off, their setting off of some issue and using that as like kind of the excuse.
Oh,
like
I love going into my shit. I love it. I'm like,
I drink because most people be like, "Oh, I drink because I like it," but you don't. That's not really why you're drinking. It's for people who have issues with drinking, especially, you're drinking because there's something else going on and you don't want to address that issue. Because you'll never meet somebody who's like, "I really like being drunk," you know, like it's something about it has this like really amazing effect on my life and I can draw from it, you know. It's always some sort of put off something. It's a bad relationship
and
with
it's not just chemicals that do this, right? Like here's a more nuanced example. I know a guy who got really addicted to running to the point where he was destroying his knees because he would run all the time, and the cartilage in between his kneecaps was just, he had to have surgery on both of his knees. And I asked him, I was like, man, that sucks because running is like so good for you and like something that humans would always do. He's like, yeah, but I don't think it was really about the running. It was about why he ran.
Why?
It was because he was lonely. He had like broken up with a girlfriend, and part of the reason that they broke up was that she was in incredible shape and he wasn't. So like he had a hardcore response that was like, then I'm going to be in the best shape of my life and make her regret it. And he ran with that anger every morning.
Yep, and it destroyed his
knees. And so similarly, I don't think it's even about, there's nothing wrong with alcohol or marijuana or even probably heroin or meth. Yeah. But I bet
Not even once, though. Don't do it.
Yeah. But they're much more challenging examples of how are you examining your relationship with the world around you. If you're going to go into some sort of relationship with heroin, you'd better have an extremely good grasp on who you are and how you deal with the world around you, because the vast majority of people do not, and the vast majority of people are going to have an awful run out with that particular substance.
I think the idea of like a gateway drug is actually a really interesting metaphor for me for the kind of slide into a deeper numbing or a deeper escapism that anything can find. I don't think people, like someone's just like, I've been sober my whole life, like, ooh, heroin, and then they just pick it up. You get there, and you get to a drug like that after trying a series of numbings that don't work. And you think, this is going to be it. This is finally the thing that's going to do it for me. And the truth is that nothing like that exists outside of you.
Yeah.
You have to find that inside. And if you find that inside, that's the most wonderful drug that's ever going to exist. But it's scary as fuck to get there. There's some line in the Bible that I always misquote really horribly that is something to the extent of walking into the river, what appears to be the river, or there's a quote about like what things are in the spiritual land of God. And that when you walk into the river, you'll be burned. They're like, if you want to be cooled and you want to relax and you want to be lazy and you walk into the river, you will catch fire. But if you see the fire and it excites you and you run into it, you'll be soothed and all things will become peace for you or something like that. So it's a way of saying like we need to face the things that really bother us, and there's a great reward for doing so. It just doesn't seem like it when you're standing there. You know, even like your fear of clowns or your fear of loneliness or whatever it
fear
is.
of the Tower of Doom.
Sure.
And guitar playing.
Right. But look at all these
Do
great
that shit.
things that have come from running into that fire, right?
What
Mm-hmm.
What is the Tower of Doom, and how are you using that example?
It's a ride at Elitch's.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were just using it, that same literal
Well,
thing that was from the story before.
What
It
did you
was
get
the
from
metaphor this
from
time.
facing that fear?
Well, no, it was just literally like I was terrified of the Tower of Doom and I didn't want to ride it. So I was like, I have to ride it to figure out what that is.
Face it, yeah. What did you get out of it, out of facing that fear?
Just freedom from it. Honestly, it felt like, okay, I can conquer. I don't have. This thing is not an obstacle to me anymore.
Right.
I don't want to ride it again. Like, I'm not going to touch it again.
Right.
But like I could say, like, cool, I've been there, I've seen it, I've done it. Like,
Yeah, I think one of the greatest things that you learn from facing your fears is how much we are afraid of our fears, how much we are afraid of being afraid. And if you can learn to be more okay with being afraid, you know, then when you encounter it, it sort of dissipates and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll never be able to face the fear if you're afraid of the fear all the time. So it's a weird sort of paradox of dichotomy, but it seems to work really well, and there's great freedom from facing it. Anything. If you're afraid of, if you're an audience member and wondering, how do I apply this to my life? Then do anything. Anything you're afraid of. Just run headfirst into it.
Yep.
And I promise you'll feel great afterwards.
Yeah, that's what we're referred to as processing the emotion. So
Right.
you can't put it off. You can't avoid it. Or the longer you avoid it, the more it's going to be an issue when you finally get around to dealing with it. So if you deal with it in the moment, you're going to find that the positive ramifications are much greater.
and you know the difference because your body will have a natural response if you're in danger.
Right.
But if it's fear, it's like, it's different.
Yeah, danger's not fear.
Yeah.
It's a totally different thing. Danger's got kind of like an ominous, like, like a feeling of caution, like I should be smart here. There's something's telling me to look again. Fear is loud. It's annoying. It's got a sort of screechy quality. Like, no, turn back. Don't do that. And it argues with itself. That's one of my identifiers of fear, is that, like if I'm afraid, if I want to do something but I have fear around it, I'll hear my ego arguing with itself about it. Well, maybe you should do that. No, you shouldn't do that. I mean, what'll Mary think of you if you do that? Well, what do I care about if she thinks? You're right. You do care too much about what she thinks. Like as soon as I hear that voice, I think, oh, that's that fear asshole.
So I should just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, just dive in anyway, and say, you know, maybe all those things are true, but only one way to find out.
mean to talk around in circles,
Where did that come from?
Oh, that's just what I think when you're the argument and you're talking with yourself.
In your head, yeah.
You know, like conversation with theoretical conversations. Like you know you're going to bump into someone later, and you're going to like try and talk them into or out of something, or you know the conversation's going to happen, or you want a conversation to happen. You know, it's stuff that has no basis in reality whatsoever. But you find yourself like driving down the road, and you're like having
You know
a
what I'm
conversation.
gonna say.
You're having a conversation with your boss, and if
Yeah.
you really think about it, you're like, that's probably not what my boss would say because I never guess what my boss is going to say
Ever.
Oh my God, the rage driving when you're like, I'm gonna cuss this person out, and then you get there and it's like, oh, that. Like, we
Yeah.
could have just had. We actually just had a conversation and it turned out so much better.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't put that on.
I
there.
haven't. Yeah, I've long since grown out of like real visceral reactions to just about anything, you know, because you've had
you're
so
always
many of
wrong.
those
As well.
obfuscations. Yeah, you're always wrong. That's one of my favorite life lessons. Was like you think that like when it comes to what you think people are thinking, you're always wrong.
There's an old Buddhist maxim, which is the mind is a great student and a terrible master. So Yeah, often I think, man, why do I listen to this dude? Like, he's wrong about everything. You know, think about how many times in our lives our minds have said, well, no, don't do that. All the fears that have built up. Like, what if that were a real person? If that was John Shockness or Samson, and they were that fearful all the time and that wrong all of the time, who am I to still listen to them?
Yeah.
They've got no idea what they're talking
That's
about.
an interesting analogy to like people's relationship with real people too. You know, the people you find who have that relationship with themselves, where they keep taking themselves seriously despite the fact that it keeps letting them down.
Yeah.
They will often be surrounded by those same kinds of people.
Resonant frequencies.
Yep.
You attract what you are. Well, we're already at the end of the podcast.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for sitting down with us and
Thank you guys.
Yeah, here in our beautiful city. Kid Astronaut, tell us a little bit more about where we can find you online and in real life before we go.
Yeah, so next month, the next full moon is on September 6th, and I'll be announcing something then.
Ooh.
But until then, Spotify, SoundCloud, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, pretty much everywhere. It's Kid Astronaut. Or if we're homies, follow John Shockness. I don't add very many people to my personal page, just because that's where I get rowdy.
No
But-
new friends.
I don't know. In real life, at least, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just don't want to, because other people post like really weird shit that throws me off. So sometimes I'm just like, I gotta be specific.
You want to
know?
curate what you see.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
already curated for me. So, you know. But,
Well, don't forget it's Kid Astronaut with a V.
yeah, on Instagram and Twitter it is a V.
Okay.
That's just because there's like a dude with like 30 posts. He doesn't even do anything.
Yeah, we
So
feel
I've
that way
written to
about We Are
Instagram,
Denver.
so-
Don't worry.
I've written to Instagram. I'll get it. I'll get it eventually. But
What
as
about
for now,
live?
Kid
Where can we
Astronaut
find you
with
live?
So I'm playing September 9th at the Cherry Creek Library. I'm really excited about that. I've been really enjoying those kind of off the path shows, so that when I do get back into like the venue circuit, it will just feel like new because I was kind of getting burnt out. So
That's easy to do in that venue world. And I'll tell you, I've seen Kid Astronaut a few times in like quiet spaces like this, and libraries and churches, and it's perfect. It's exactly
yeah,
where you should be.
it's
man.
like where I need to be, you know.
That's right.
So
And people who listen. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, John. Thank you for sitting down with us, Samson. Stick around for Nothing Explained, which is Samson's podcast coming up next.
Yep. Big up Rich here. We are Denver, and Rich is helping us out by providing us a wonderful space
Yeah.
at the Ghost House Studios.
Yeah, come
shout
check it
to
out.
Miles.
Shout out to Miles and
Yeah.
Nick and everyone else behind the scenes. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Love and peace. Hope you guys have a good day.